got you into the metal scene?
Well, I've always been around the musical. My family's always been pretty musical. I think metal was kind of at the last of everything for me, really. Like growing up, I've always been kind of fascinated by music. My dad would always play the piano. He'd always play his keyboards, and just kind of used to being around instruments. It would just be pretty normal. It was kind of strange to me if someone didn't play an instrument, if you know what I mean. Like just kind of used to it being around. So I guess I kind of grew up at school. I was forced to play piano. Like I remember dreading having piano lessons, being like, "Oh, I really don't want to do this." But I'm really grateful actually that my parents kind of pushed me through and made me have piano lessons because it kind of teaches you the basics of everything. So kind of started out on piano, did a bit of clarinet back in school days. That was pretty wild. I remember someone coming into like a school assembly and playing some pretty wild jazz on clarinet and thinking, yeah, I think I could do that maybe. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, pretty different. And then, like, my dad always had an acoustic guitar lying around. I gave that a go. And at school, everyone was into punk rock at that point. And, like, one of my best friends at school, he was a drummer. And there was another guy who played guitar, and we needed a bassist to make the band complete. So I was like, oh, I'll get a bass. So I got a bass. I asked around, picked up a bass, and pretty soon I got bored of playing bass, switched to six strings, and that was kind of that. Played in a few sort of punk and hardcore bands, and it was kind of weird. Like I kind of discovered metal, but I was definitely sort of more of a sort of punk guy, I suppose, sort of starting into heavy music, and there wasn't
Right.
much of a music scene by me either. Like I kind of grew up in sort of a small sort of Somerset town, and it was actually the smallest city in England, and it was known for cathedral music, and I was a choral singer, funnily enough.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Kind of ditch the religious aspects, but if you kind of listen to choral music, I mean, the harmonies, the transitions, everything. Um, you can kind of apply that to whatever you're writing for. So it was kind of this weird hybrid of being surrounded by classical and choral music, but also having friends that were kind of branching out into other stuff too. So I mean, I think I was kind of lucky to be around so much kind of different music. So yeah, metal was kind of sort of the last thing I discovered, if I'm being honest. Yeah. It's like not your typical way. I mean, I suppose I'd like to say, yeah, I've discovered loads of sick bands near me, but it really wasn't that way. I kind of had to dig it out myself.
Well, and it all sounds like a perfect making for a nicely blended eclectic style. I'll get into that a little bit with Venom Prison. What kind of were your favorite bands growing up?
I think the first band that kind of really made me think this is what I want to do was AFI, Fire Inside. Like for me, like punk was always cool, but I didn't really gel with the sort of just happy major chords, just the topics. It just wasn't really doing much for me. But sort of the music and the energy, that was all cool. And then sort of discovering AFI kind of around the Black Sails and Art of Drowning era, just seeing the aesthetic of the band, sort of the dark sort of overtones of the band. That was kind of for me, that was really sort of like, damn. I remember hearing Days of the Phoenix or seeing that music video, and
Mm.
pretty much after seeing Days of the Phoenix, that was kind of, I think that was the song that changed everything for me. That was like that fucked it for me. That was like, yeah, not gonna get a regular job. That I'm just gonna go on tour, play shows. That's it. But kind of sort of progressing on from that, I've sort of kind of got into. I remember hearing really early sort of metal bands, but it didn't really sort of connect with me until like I started going to shows. Like I said, there was no real scene by me, so I'd have to travel pretty far. Like I remember the nearest good music scene. I mean, I was about an hour away from Bristol before I moved there, and I think I moved out at 18. Started going to shows kind of around there. There were some really cool sort of good local bands. There was Burning Skies, who were I don't know if you've heard of them. Have they kind of Are they sort of known in America? I don't know.
I can't say I'm familiar with them, but I mean, it's something to check out though.
Okay, but they were kind of like on the sort of European scene. They were on Life Force Records, and they did a bunch of tours with Dying Fetus, Origin back in the day, sort of around sort of
Ah, okay.
early sort of thousands. So they were cool, and really the sort of most local sort of strong music scene to me was like the South Wales scene, sort of like Newport and Cardiff, and that's kind of how I sort of came to meet Ash from Venom Prison. And it was weird because I'm a little bit older than him. I played in a metal band called Dignity Dies First, and I think he used to come to like some of the early shows. So he'd be like sort of spin kicking in the pit, and yeah, I just have no idea I had a future with that guy. Um, but yeah, it's like kind of met guys around that scene. It was a really good, strong music scene, a whole bunch of great local bands, good hardcore bands, and just kind of got to know people there. Played in a couple of hardcore bands around Bristol, and yeah, just kind of every sort of major tour that sort of Avocado or Mad would put through, they'd either be a Bristol date or a Newport date or a Cardiff date. So it's kind of around that sort of 2004, 5, 6, sort of bleeding up to sort of the mid 2010s and 15s. There was just so much music going on around that scene. I think that's kind of pretty much shaped kind of the music I listen to now. Yeah.
How exactly did you meet up with Ash Gray and Larissa Stupor? I assume it was around 2015.
Yeah, so I knew Larissa because her old hardcore band had done, I'd say a tour, but it was more of like a, a weekender with my old band. So we both had sort of hardcore bands sort of on the same page, sort of politically. So they came over from Germany and we did sort of like a short tour. And I think like she sent me a message and she said her bass player had got really sick and had asked my number so I could get some medication for her bass player because we were on the way. I think like he did something dumb, like tried to like chin a drink through a dirty sock or something ridiculous like that, and ended up getting really sick before the show. Um, so yeah, like so I guess she had my number from that and sort of organizing the tour, and then like we didn't speak for a while. Wolf Down broke up, and my hardcore band broke up, and then I remember getting a text from her saying, "Are you interested in doing a band?" And at that point, I'd kind of had enough. Like I'd sort of pretty jaded with the hardcore scene, and sort of
Right.
my band at the time kind of ended on a bit of a bum note. But I mean, it had always been in the back of my mind. I should probably do something because I think anyone who's sort of creatively minded, they say they could walk away from it, but I don't
They
think
can't.
no, they can't do it. I don't know if you're that way too, but I remember seeing the text and I was like, oh, maybe send me a demo. She sent me like a Dropbox, and that was that would have been the demo. I don't think it's online anymore. I think we took it off since we did that re-release. But sent me the demo, and I was like, yeah, I can do that. Dug out my guitar. I had to buy thicker strings because it was tuned so low comparison to the band I was playing and singing. Christ, how's this going to work? And yeah, ended up taking my pedal board, my guitar, and amp up to Newport. Met Ash, and it's like I kind of knew him, sort of. Like we'd never been sort of formally introduced, but like his old band had played with my band, and there'd be tons of crossovers. Um, and yeah, just kind of jammed from there, really.
Yeah, me as far as a musician goes and being able to walk away, like me, I used to do industrial music, I guess you could say, or like industrial metal, but it was like
What's
the
it?
whole one man band thing. And dude, after a while, and also that just the industrial scene, there's people there are so pretentious that eventually I was just like, okay, I'm first off, I'm not even doing real music as far as me myself personally was concerned. So I just walked away from it, and it's just with having a wife and a family, I don't have time really to pick up instruments or try to learn anything like that.
It's
Yeah,
tough, isn't it, finding a balance? Because like I think when the music slowed down, I thought at that point, oh yeah, I need to concentrate on making money, get a career going. But yeah, it's so hard to walk away from properly.